Wow.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, nothing. Nothing. Nothing.
Could not read?
Nothing.
No write? Could not write? Could not count?
Oh, thank you. No, thank you.
Ironically, money
Yes.
made no sense.
Yes, you know.
And you were very limited in words.
Oh.
Beginning, you couldn't speak either.
Oh. You know, there.
Steve's saying it's like a road. Life
Yes.
is like a road.
You know,
There are bumps that are stressors, things
sure. Okay.
that everybody experiences.
Oh.
But
Okay.
a stroke,
Oh. I can't do
a
it.
stroke is like hitting a brick wall.
Aphasia is a communication problem, a language problem that happens when there's damage to the language areas of the brain from a stroke or brain injury. So if you think about language, we use language when we understand what other people say, when we talk, when we read, and when we write. And so any of these components of language can be affected in the person with aphasia to varying degrees. So somebody might be able to talk a little bit and write a little bit. Somebody else might be completely unable to talk and completely unable to write. Somebody else might be able to talk in a very limited way and write more than they can talk. So it requires a good assessment by a speech-language pathologist to figure out what are the person's communication strengths and what can we teach the person's conversation partners about communicating with that person.
That's Steve's 3 children. Teresa was 24 at the time
Yes.
when Steve had a stroke. Brian also a couple years younger. Carolyn in her late teens. And, well, every family knows the mix of things that are happening
Oh.
when, you know, you've got late teens, early 20s, or any age.
If the aphasia happens in conjunction with a bigger stroke or brain injury, so that the areas of the brain that are more involved in thinking and memory are also affected, then you can have aphasia with that cognitive component, as we say. The other cognitive or mental processes can be involved. But aphasia, by definition, is a language impairment, so you can have a selective impairment of just the language processes. And that's the frustrating thing, is that thinking and memory can be quite intact, and so the person knows more than he can say.
With the 3 children, when I talked to them, they said, you know, it was just so difficult. There's the anger, the what now, and they're all thinking, what's next? Brian was saying, you know, he felt as though his dad had died, and he was afraid to be away from him in case something happened, and afraid to be with him in case something happened. And so with all that is, you know, an early, late teen, all the people are dealing with, it wasn't until, well, quite a few years later, and I say sometimes I mention, but on our back patio, when Brian and family were with us for a while, he and his dad were talking about a business idea Brian had. And I looked out and I distinctly remember, because Brian was bouncing off ideas and Steve's writing away, and they're communicating back and forth. And I thought, finally, he's realized his dad is still there.
Thank you. Yes.
And that's so hard, and families just have to, you know, to go their own way and to make that realization. And I think Teresa says it takes all of the family to give their dad a voice.
Recovery of language is different for everybody. There are people I never need to see as a speech pathologist because their aphasia is so transient that it goes away before they're ever referred to me. There are other people who come in for a short course of therapy and get better, and I discharge them. And then there are other people who go on to have aphasia for a long time, and in many cases for the rest of their lives. So it really is different for everybody. But in terms of recovery, we look beyond what happens here. We look beyond the number of words that they can say. Because if you can only say, for example, 25 words, and if we measure and 2 years later you can say 35 words, what does that mean to your everyday communication? Can you actually communicate on a daily basis beyond using those 35 words? So it all comes down to not just language recovery, but how well can the person communicate with the people around him, and how well do those other people know strategies to help move a conversation forward?
I think it has evolved, I guess. I mean, you used to write, you'd always write gestures.
Yeah.
Yeah, gestures, all sorts of nonverbal communication.
But, oh, good.
And I happen to be able to read backwards.
Okay.
Like, it's just maybe because of my teaching background, or I'm left-handed, I don't know, but stress.
Thank you.
So, I think that's important, that whatever works. Someone had said a while back, what about doing sign language?
No, thank you. I can't,
The pen is the equivalent to Steve's tongue.
Yeah, thank you.
You're saying patience.
Oh, thank you.
It is necessary. And
Yes.
I don't know, I think I somewhere in there have promised myself that I wouldn't say, no, I'm not paying attention. I'm not going to, quote, listen. Sometimes we've had to say, I'm really not getting this. Can we try tomorrow?
Thank you. Sure.
And that works. That works. Sometimes you get impatient. Patience works
Yeah.
for both of us,
Sure,
you know.
yeah.
And yes, I find myself,
Yes.
I think maybe I should be paying more attention.
No.
I sometimes, most of the time, forget in some ways that there is anything differently abled about Steve. I still, even though I'm retired from teaching, I do some teaching for an enrichment program. I also do storytelling, and a lot
Yeah.
of things take me to other locations. So
Bye.
Steve's, yeah, bye. I'll be home at such and such. So sometimes it's a day where I'm away for the full day.
Sure.
Steve might have cooked supper.
Oh,
and,
sure.
It's just very much
Yeah.
like what other families have.
Yes.
So if I'm guilty, sometimes I think, well, I should probably call and see if he's all right.
There.
Toronto
Yeah.
6 and Boston. Okay, in the 6th inning, Toronto had 7,
Yeah.
Boston 2. Okay.
Go.
Jeff, canvas.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
you know,
Oh, canvas. What, did someone come to the door?
Yeah.
Oh, I see, canvassing for donations. Is that it? Okay.
there.
So in the game, there was someone on 1st and 3rd, 1 out,
Yeah.
and the doorbell rang. Well,
You know,
they're explaining, yeah. But you wanted to get back to the game.
me? Oh, sure.
They wanted your name, so you wrote your name. Oh, and needed your address for the receipt. Yes, so you wrote everything down, anxious to get back to the game.
Yeah.
Well,
you know, good.
you made it.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah.
For this afternoon,
Yeah.
the aphasia program.
Yeah.
Are you going over after Yin's, after
Yeah.
at the restaurant to set up?
Yeah.
Do you want any help?
No.
No?
Steve asks people to be spark plugs and get these programs going in their communities. I think that it's essential. I think for community re-engagement of stroke survivors, I think for people to really move into a meaningful life after aphasia, they need the the communities to be accessible. It's no different than, 30 years ago we used to build buildings without elevators, without wheelchair ramps, without wide doorways, and the people who used wheelchairs would sit outside these buildings and wonder why they couldn't access services. We've come a long way in the world of physical disability, and we need to catch up for people with communication disabilities. We need to build those communication ramps and help others to understand how to allow people with aphasia to access their services.
When you first had your stroke, people seemed to treat you like you were feeble-minded.
Oh.
Stupid.
Yeah. Oh. Oh.
And obviously that makes you angry.
Oh. You know.
At the dentist?
Yeah, nothing. Me, good.
Looking after your teeth, but totally talking to me.
Okay.
And Steve literally stood in front of me and said, pay attention to me.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that is
Yeah.
so frustrating, so humiliating.
Oh.
And I think, too, that the loss of language, it's, I suppose, they say like being in a foreign country.
Oh, I can't. Oh, well.
You know what you want to say.
Oh, yes.
And usually it's lots.
Yeah, thank you.
Caregivers and family members first need to understand and give the person credit for being competent. So it starts there, acknowledging that the person with aphasia knows more than he can say. And then the next step is to learn some concrete strategies so that you can communicate effectively with the person who has aphasia. So some very basic examples are people with aphasia need to have a way to answer yes and no. And sometimes they will say yes when they mean no, or vice versa. So one concrete way to do that is to print yes and no on cards. And then you can ask a direct yes-no question, and there's an art to that. Ask one direct question and wait for the client, the person with aphasia, to point to the answer, yes or no.
Oh. Well, it was sort of like this. It was a coffee shop.
Yes.
But it was in Brantford. Steve and Carol lived in Brantford then. And I used to frequent a coffee shop that was named Cheers quite often. And Steve started coming in. And there was a group of us that kind of collected, and Ed Pass and a couple other fellas that kind of met every morning informally. And Steve started showing up and kind of sat down with us and seemed to join in what I thought was the conversation. And he followed. I just thought he was sort of quiet. It took me several weeks to realize that he didn't speak.
Yeah.
But he seemed to have fitted right in for 2 or 3 weeks in our sports talk or our news talk or our politics talk or whatever we were talking about,
There.
Yeah, just like we're doing here. Steve will write some of the words. Usually, briefly, like he'll write 1 or 2 or 3 words, and but it's always in context. So then it's the gist of the context. It's not too tough, except when he does it upside down, and then or he does the skywriting. And
I hope that you look at them and think they're just talking. I think that that's the best outcome, because for people with aphasia to be able to forget about the aphasia and just have a conversation is monumental. It's huge because, of course, conversation is the problem, communication is the problem. The role of conversation-based groups is to help people to have a place to not only go out and practice their new communication skills, but also to make new social connections and have that feeling of connectedness, which is too often lost after aphasia.
I knew he was calling.
Yeah.
How can you find him?
Yes.
I think maybe today to ask people why you like to meet. Why is it a good idea to come in and meet for our aphasia group?
I wouldn't miss it on a bet.
Thank you.
I tell my children, well, where you going today? I'll say, well, I'm going to the aphasia group. Okay. Well, can you go stop and go with us? I said, no, I'll go to the aphasia.
Right.
Yes.
I like this Polaroid.
You do,
Yes.
eh?
Oh, yes.
Good.
Yes.
You like the program?
Yes.
Yes.
okay, wow, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
For Frank.
With everybody every week.
Oh, yes.
Breakfast and and nap.
Yeah,
So do I.
Oh,
Yes.
So do I.
I like to write on the calendar, nap 1 to 3. Which means, of course,
That means.
Norfolk Aphasia program.
Right.
Well, remember when we first started
Yeah.
a couple years ago, I thought we could be Norfolk Aphasia group,
Nag.
but you know, did we want to nag?
In the case of somebody like Stephen Goff, whose verbal identity was very much a part of his self-identity, he was a businessman, a very successful salesperson, and then he planned to enter the ministry. And so his verbal identity was very much a part of who he was and what he did. And so to lose that, it took him a while to reestablish his new identity and to see himself in a different way. But he's done that very successfully.
Breakfast time.
yeah.
Social that we
Very good.